Good evening, fellow American cooks. Say, I've got a question for you. What in the world happened to cake? Oh, I don't mean fussy French gâteaux with their mushy middles or Austrian torts with all their sugar-dusted almond flour pastriness. Nor do I refer to those fudgy doorstops that American pastry chefs keep fostering under the false moniker of flourless chocolate cake. No, I mean cake, as in the stuff you get at birthday parties and, for better or worse, at weddings. When, dear viewer, was the last time you baked a cake not from a box? Just as I suspected. Well, America, it's time we got our cake groove back in gear. Now, each of the 87 cards in this lottery ticket drum bears the name of a classic American cake, and we are going to pull one, and we are going to bake one. Drum roll, please. And today's cake will be... No, sorry, I'll pull another one. Come on, get out of here. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, fate has spoken. The ubiquitous, albeit often ignored and shamelessly abused, pound cake. All right. Maybe I gave fate a hand, but believe me, countrymen, pound cake is the cornerstone of the American bakery pantheon upon which the entirety of our national cakedom rests. Well, like many great American traditions, the pound cake was born upon foreign shores, but that doesn't mean it's not red, white, blue, and... Historians and anthropologists generally agree that most American butter-based cakes, from birthday to wedding and everywhere in between, descend from one great mother cake, the pound cake. They also agree that the pound cake was born in jolly old England, which makes a fair amount of sense. After all, to bake a cake, you need an oven. And Romans had brought bread ovens to Britannia during their stay on that island, south of Hadrian's Wall, of course. As you recall, the Scots would not be ruled ever. Freedom! Consequently, the Scots would also never be really famous for baking cakes. Returning crusaders later brought sugar back from the Middle East, an event which would eventually fuel overland and maritime trade and permanently alter the taste buds of Englishmen everywhere. Sugar! Those folks have got a serious sweet tooth and the sweet teeth to prove it. And lest we forget, Britain was and remains a leading producer of quality dairy goods. This includes, of course, butter, which, despite the protestations of the French, is as good eats gets. And of course, everyone back then used to keep buck chickens, which meant plenty of fresh eggs. The last required ingredient, of course, is flour. The starch-laden cement of pastry, breads, biscuits, muffins, and, of course, cakes. Now, with these four protean players in the pantry, it was simply a matter of time before some ingenious Englishman or woman stumbled upon the fact that a pound of each could be combined to produce a cake both tasty and robust, sweet, but with kind of a stiff upper lip. The fact that a pound cake recipe didn't actually make it into print until 1847 is no big surprise, seeing as how everyone short of the village idiot could easily memorize the recipe.
Let's see, that's 1 pound of sugar, butter the size of a bird's egg. What do you want to play Super Cat? Okay.
Modern recipe writers claiming the classic is heavy or not sweet enough like to tinker around with the pound cake parts list, but I think that the proportions are just fine. The skid, on the other hand, is a goner. Although the balanced scale hints at a symbiotic symmetry, to really understand the inner workings of a pound cake, one must look through the ingredients to the molecular mysteries within. Sugar is easy. It's 100% sucrose, the most common of kitchen disaccharides. Flour is composed mostly of starch and protein. Eggs contain fat and protein and water, as well as phospholipids, which are natural emulsifiers. Butter contains anywhere from 80 to 85% fat, and the rest is water and milk solids, including lactose or milk sugar. The important, nay, critical thing to realize about butter is that the fat actually comes in three forms. There's the continuous phase, that is the phase that all the other stuff, including the water, is floating in. Then there are globules from the original cream that survived the churning process, and there are fat crystals, which will soon be very important indeed. Each of these culinary characters assumes a specific role in the baked good drama, all right? Proteins play tougheners. If you like chewy, crusty French baguettes and the like, thank protein. Sugar and fats, on the other hand, are tenderizers, which break down or lubricate tougheners so that they aren't so tough anymore, okay? Starches and powdered goods, flours, cornstarch, cocoa powder, that kind of thing, are all dryers because they absorb moisteners, which are always played by water and water-type liquids. Now, although tough and tender, moist and dry are in fact opposites on the quadraphonic Zen wheel of kitchen life, like so many opposing forces, they can and should balance each other out. If our formulations are correct and our technique precise, this is what pound cake is all about. Moist, dry, tough, and tender, all working together. Nice. Stay. One would think that a cake containing equal doses of 4 simple ingredients would produce the same cake, time after time, baker after baker. Alas, as you can see, this is not the case. Each of these cakes was prepared with a pound of butter, a pound of sugar, a pound of eggs, and a pound of flour, and they are all different. That is because the most important ingredient in pound cake isn't an ingredient at all. It's technique. And techniques can vary widely depending on the recipe. For instance, this is from the mid-18th century. This would make a modern baker's hair stand on end. Okay, it's from a book called The Art of Cookery, and it reads, to make a pound cake,
take a pound of butter and beat it into an earthen pan with your hand one way until it becomes a fine, thick cream. Then ready 12 eggs, but hold the whites, beat them well, and beat them into the butter. Then beat in a pound of flour and a pound of sugar as well, and a few caraways. Beat this all well for an hour with your hand or a wooden spoon.
So, why is pound cake so classically labor-intensive? Because when creamed together diligently, the butter and sugar will produce a light, airy mixture, which will form the foundation of a cake that will rise beautifully in here without any chemical leavening whatsoever. How? Patience, grasshopper. First thing, oven rack, middle. Second thing, heat 350. Third thing, the pans. Now, if you're going to take the classic approach, it would be 2 9x5 loaf pans, and you're going to want to properly prep them. Butter all over, edges, corners, everything. Then flour. I usually use about 1/3 of a cup. We'll get the excess out later. Just put it in one side, and then top one pan on the next. Cover with a little plastic wrap just to keep it secure, and then just shake the devil out of it to distribute the flour. Unwrap, and there you have it. Now, if you want to use a tube pan, that will definitely hold all of the batter, but it's also a little complicated. You got to butter everything and flour everything. By the way, the feet are for inverting an angel food cake. We don't need to mess with that right now. There, same amount of flour, and then since there's a hole in the middle, we won't use plastic wrap, just a clean towel. Tap it all around, then remove the excess, and you are ready to go. Interested in a successful pound cake? Then I've got one word for you. Plastic. In order to cream, the fat in the butter must be warm enough to be malleable, but not so warm that its structure collapses or, heaven helps us, flat out and melts. Now, I removed this pound of unsalted butter from the refrigerator a few hours ago and have been carefully monitoring its internal temperature until a few minutes ago when it hit 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually, anything between 65 and 70 would be fine, and in parts of the world that aren't here, they call that room temperature. Not in the South. All right, it's in the mixing bowl along with a pound of sugar, and I put the sugar on the bottom so that it doesn't fly all over the place. I have the paddle in place, and we're going to cream that on medium for 5 minutes, which I might add beats the heck out of doing it by hand for an hour. So, what's going on here that's so gosh darned important? Well, bubbles, for one thing. As the mixer paddle turns, it's actually shoving all those little jagged pills of sugar into the plastic mass of the butter, opening up oodles of little air pockets. Now, as the sugar granules begin to dissolve in the water phase of the butter, those air pockets will remain, supported by, guess what? That's right, butterfat crystals. Now, here's a fun fact. Not all butter fat crystals are alike, okay? Now, your standard run-of-the-mill grocery store variety of butter is typically churned very, very quickly because, of course, time is money and the processor wants to get on with making more butter. Well, fast churning creates very large butter crystals, okay? And large butter crystals support the construction of large bubbles. All right, large bubbles make for a kind of a big, rough, unrefined texture inside baked goods, okay? European butters, they're different. They're often lauded for being a little bit more fatty than regular butter, or because they often contain lactic acid, which gives them kind of a yogurty twang, which is nice. But what's really special about these butters, besides, of course, their price tag, which can be a little high, is that they are slow churned, okay? Slow churning creates small, little fat crystals, and small fat crystals support, you got it, small, little bubbles. What does this mean? Well, it means a finer texture in your cake. So I suggest that in this case, you splurge for the really good European-style butter. Your cake will thank you. Now, as you can see, we've got a very light and fluffy mixture here. It's because it's full of air. Now, turn the speed down to low and add the eggs, okay? 9 of them, large chicken eggs. We're going to add them one at a time, very, very slowly, allowing about 20 seconds for each egg to integrate. Why? Well, think about it. Eggs are mostly water, butter almost all fat. We're making an emulsion here, and just like a vinaigrette, you need to drizzle one into the other very slowly so that they can incorporate. Otherwise, you're going to have a big, broken mess of eggs floating on top of butter. Take your time. I know, I said you only need the 4 ingredients to make a pound cake, and that's 100% true. But adding just a little bit of vanilla and salt will up the flavor ante considerably. And, well, I don't think that's cheating. Now, is it? No. Okay, at this point, finally, it is time to introduce the dry goods. That is the stuff that is going to absorb the moisture, i.e. the flour. Not only flour, mind you, but cake flour. Why cake flour? 3 big fat reasons. 1, cake flour is milled from low protein or soft wheat. When agitated with water, wheat proteins, of course, create gluten, those bungee cord-like molecular structures that result in a great deal of chewiness. Not exactly what we want in a cake. Now, is it? The lower the protein, the less gluten, and that is a good thing. Also, cake flour is milled extra fine. Let's take a look. If you could enlarge all-purpose flour granules about a gajillion times, it would probably look a lot like this, jagged and irregular in both size and color. Cake flour, on the other hand, is much finer and more uniform. These smaller pieces integrate into batter very easily, and that means less stirring and therefore less gluten production. You'll also notice the cake flour is much brighter. That's because it's bleached. Not only does this result in a lighter product, it changes the pH of the granules so that the starches swell and gel more efficiently. And that translates into a lighter, more pleasing texture. Introducing flour to a batter can be tricky business, and I've made more than a few major messes in my time. The key is to keep the speed at its lowest, work in 3 even installments, and keep the flour in a vessel that will bend to your will, if you get my drift. So, first dose goes in nice and slow. You know, this whole operation is going to take a few minutes. Just 1/3. There we go. Once it is worked all the way in, no more flour showing, you can bring the second dose to the party. Just take your time. If you do it fast, it'll fly all over the room. When that's completely disappeared, then and only then, you bring the 3rd dose, final dose to the party. There. Get a little on the mixer. It's no big deal. Nice. Now go ahead and scrape down the bowl, because it probably will have worked its way up the side. And then beat on medium speed for 30 seconds. Then you'll have a nice elastic and plastic batter, just like this. There, that looks perfect. Okay, now, even distribution between the 2 pans can be tricky, so just use your scale. Put on the 1 pan and do a tare function, zero it out, and then add batter till you get 2 pounds. Whatever you got left, you know, goes into the 2nd pan. You can smooth over the top, but don't get too carried away, because it'll even out in the oven. Whether you're talking a single 2-pan or double loaf pans, you'll be baking for approximately 1 hour or until the interior of the cakes hit 210 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, most baking recipes are concerned with time, when temperature is actually a better indicator. Why? Because as the batter heats up, the air and all those microscopic bubbles expand, forcing the batter to rise. At around 140 degrees, water vapor forms, expanding the bubbles even further. Then, at 180, give or take a degree or two, starches swell and undergo gelation. That is, they form gels. That's what starches do. Soon after, the proteins coagulate, forming a lattice-like structure around the bubbles. The final step is, of course, browning, which doesn't set in until around 200 degrees. At this point, enough moisture has been driven out or absorbed that the sugars at the surface can caramelize and the proteins can undergo the Maillard reactions. In other words, the crust turns golden brown and delicious. And that, my friends, looks a little bit like this. Not only have we attained golden brown and delicious, but our thermometer confirms 210.5. Close enough. So the baking phase is done, but that does not mean that the cakes are finished. Truth is, cooling is as a critical part of the process as the application of heat. You see, the starches and proteins won't be stable until the temperature drops considerably. So think of these cakes as newborns, all shiny and nice and golden brown, but very vulnerable. So place them still in the pans on a cooling rack for not 1 second less than 10 minutes. Then return and de-pan. They'll be cool enough to handle by then, and place back on the rack for another 10 minutes. There you go. Now that's a mighty nice looking cake. And the contrast between the crusty exterior and soft, moist interior is especially intoxicating. But it won't stay that way if you don't store it correctly. Unlike most baked goods, pound cake does not like to be entombed. Your best bet, in fact, leave on the cutting board, covered in a clean tea towel, and eat in 3 days. Or you can cut it, wrap it, and freeze it. In fact, one of my favorite breakfast treats is to pop a frozen slice or two directly into the old toaster. 1 toast cycle on medium will thaw it out. 2 touches, and you get a little toasty bit of heaven. Oh! Ha-ha. Want some? Oh, come on. I said it was good. I never said it was lean. Of course, now that we know the balance of tougheners, dryers, tenderizers, and moisteners required for the job, we might just be able to hack this baby on the lean side. Okay, the way I figure it, if we want to reduce, say, the eggs and the butter, we need to replace them with more moisture, some protein, and some type of tenderizing agent to replace all the fat. The only conceivable answer is, of course, whole buttermilk. That is milk whose lactose or milk sugar has been converted into lactic acid by the addition of a specific bacteria. If we reduce our original parts list to 4 whole eggs and say 12 ounces of butter, we should be able to fill the chemical gap with a cup of buttermilk. Batter building will be similar, but with some important detours. Since we're working with less butter, we will need more creaming in order to generate enough of those tiny bubbles. So boost the mixing time from 5 to 6 minutes on medium. Of course, when that's nice and fluffy, we'll save time with the eggs because there are only 4 of them. But they do need to be introduced very slowly, just as before. When they're all in, be the same teaspoon of vanilla extract, the same half teaspoon of kosher salt, then return to medium speed for 30 seconds. Now, we're ready to go slow and with the first installment of flour, followed by half of the buttermilk. There. Now, at any point when things start climbing up the side of the bowl, stop, scrape it down, especially if there's a lot of dry flour up there. Then we bring the second dose of flour, very nice, work it in 100%, and the final dose of the buttermilk. That allows us to finish, of course, with the final third of the flour. Always begin and end with the dry ingredients. Beat for 30 seconds on medium, and you are ready to pan up. Nice, plastic, and elastic. Just what we want. Baking is still roughly an hour with a thermal target of 210 degrees. Now, if you watch closely, you'll notice a lag time between the setting of the cake and the browning phase. That's because acidic ingredients, like buttermilk, accelerate setting, which means less moisture loss. But acids also slow browning. So we're going to increase the heat to 375 degrees in order to achieve golden brown and delicious. Voila. A tender, golden cake with a surprisingly tart twist. Is it pound cake? No, not strictly speaking, but it is good eats. And with all the calories you saved, you could make a glaze. Go on, make it. First thing you'll need to do is to generate a teaspoon of orange or lemon zest. Then pour on 2.5 tablespoons of freshly squeezed orange or lemon juice. Add a pinch of salt and then start working in 6 ounces by weight of powdered sugar. Go slowly. It's almost like building your own batter here. So just work it in until it looks kind of like very, very thick milk. There you go. You're going to need to use this quickly before it starts to dry. There. Now, since it makes quite a mess, I like to do this over a cooling rack so the excess can drip away, which it always does. Let it set for 30 minutes and you will have made good eats great. And so we see, fellow countrymen, that what was born of English ingenuity reaches its full fruition with the help of American know-how and flat-out dessert self-determination. Now go forth and bake while I enjoy my good eats. Oh.